I've spent a lot of time rewatching the moments where Sheldon Cooper actually lets his guard down, and it's almost never around the people who are supposed to understand him. Leonard spent years trying to logic Sheldon into being normal. His mom tried to pray it out of him, but Penny? She's the only one who didn't look at him like a project that needed to be finished. Penny and Sheldon should not work, not even a little. Different worlds, different languages, different everything. Sheldon is the extreme. The hyper-rational genius who schedules his bathroom breaks and can't understand why people say fine when they don't mean fine. And Penny is everything he isn't. Warm, instinctive, socially fluent in a way that makes scientists nervous. So why do we sometimes feel safest with the people who make absolutely no sense for us? We're told that great relationships are built on similarity, but there's a side of human psychology that says otherwise. Sometimes the deepest connections aren't based on being alike, they're based on friction. And I don't think any show has captured this beautiful contradiction better than The Big Bang Theory did with Sheldon and Penny. Let's take a closer look as to why these two people across a hallway who had no business being close became something neither of them can explain. They just became each other's secure base, the one person who made the world quiet enough to finally breathe. Here's something I think gets overlooked. Sheldon is surrounded by brilliant people. Leonard, Howard, Raj, they all speak his language. They understand the science. They get the references. They can keep up. And yet none of them really see him the way Penny does. And the reason is actually simple. They're too close to it. When you speak the same language as someone, you stop paying attention to the way they speak. You fill in the gaps. You assume. But Penny came in from the outside, no context, no assumptions. And so she had to actually watch him, study him, figure him out from scratch. And that's how she ended up knowing things about Sheldon that nobody else knew. The Christmas napkin is the perfect example. She gets him a napkin signed by Leonard Nimoy, and it destroys him. Not because of what it is, but because of what it means. She paid attention. She noticed what mattered to him, really mattered, and she acted on it without being asked and without it benefiting her in any way. Most people in Sheldon's life find him exhausting and work around him. Penny found him exhausting and paid attention anyway. That's a different thing entirely, and I think that's exactly why fans responded to that moment the way they did. Because most of us aren't looking for someone who understands us perfectly. We're just looking for someone who notices. Now, here's the part of this dynamic that I think is genuinely underrated. Everyone talks about what Penny gives Sheldon, the warmth, the patience, the humanity, and that's real. But what does Sheldon give Penny? He gives her honesty, complete, unfiltered, sometimes uncomfortable honesty. Not because he's trying to be kind, not because he's trying to be cruel, just because he literally doesn't know how to be anything else. He doesn't have the social filter that tells you when to soften something. He just says what he sees. And there's a moment in season 6 that quietly captures this better than anything. Penny is performing in a stage production, and Sheldon, who had zero interest in being there, watches her, really watches her. And afterward, he calls her remarkable. Just that word. Remarkable. And it lands completely differently than anything Leonard ever says to her. Because Leonard loves her, which means there's always a part of you wondering if he's being objective. But Sheldon doesn't traffic in kindness for its own sake. He has no agenda. He just says what he sees. There's something quietly powerful about having a person like that in your life. Someone who cannot perform approval. Because when they finally say something good, you know it's true. Penny gives Sheldon warmth. Sheldon gives Penny truth. And I think that's why this friendship feels so balanced, even though on the surface, it looks completely one-sided. Here's what I keep coming back to. Sheldon's world before Penny is almost entirely made up of people who speak his language. Scientists, academics, people who engage with everything through logic and data. And that's comfortable. But it's also a closed loop, everyone reflecting the same worldview back at him over and over. Penny breaks the loop. Not by being smarter, not by out-arguing him, just by being so completely different that he has no existing framework for her. And that's actually important, because Sheldon has a framework for everything. He categorizes, he analyzes, he files things away. But Penny doesn't fit any of his categories. And I think that's exactly why she gets through to him in ways nobody else can. There's a line from psychology, the idea that growth doesn't happen inside your comfort zone. It happens at the edge of it, where things are slightly unfamiliar, slightly challenging. Sheldon's comfort zone is a very specific, very controlled place. And Penny is permanently, cheerfully outside of it. She doesn't drag him out of his loop by force. She just exists outside it, and slowly, without either of them planning it, he starts to follow. By the later seasons, something has quietly shifted, and this is the part I think fans feel more than they consciously notice. Penny isn't tolerating Sheldon anymore. She's advocating for him. She knows what he means when he says something that sounds cold but isn't. She knows when to push back and when to let him have his thing. She knows him in the specific, detailed way that only comes from years of showing up. And Sheldon, who once couldn't be bothered to learn her name, starts trusting her in a way he doesn't quite trust anyone else. Not even Amy. There's a moment near the end of the series, his birthday party, the apartment full of people, and it becomes too much for him. He retreats, and it's Penny who follows. Not Amy, not Leonard, Penny. She sits with him, and she tells him he's become one of her favorite people. And Sheldon admits, quietly, in his way, that he's gotten more comfortable with her. Which, in Sheldon's language, is about as close to I love you as he ever gets. And I find something genuinely moving in that, not because it's dramatic, but because of how ordinary the path to it was. No grand gesture, no turning point, just years of small moments that quietly added up to something real. That's what the audience fell in love with, not the big scenes, the accumulation of small ones. The thing about Penny and Sheldon is that neither of them changed for the other. Penny never became a scientist, Sheldon never became easy. They just made room for the parts of each other that didn't fit anywhere else, for the version of themselves that only existed in that specific friendship. And I think that's the reason this relationship has stayed with people long after the show ended. Because it's not a love story in the traditional sense. It's something quieter than that. And maybe more honest. It's the story of two people who had every reason to give up on each other and just didn't. They don't change each other. They just show each other something. And sometimes, that's enough. Thanks for taking a closer look. I'll see you in the next one.